button over on my end.
I'm about to.
Perfect. And seems like as good a time as any to get that juicy can opening sound effect going.
Oh no, I just cut my nails. I can't do it. There
Cheers.
we go. Salud.
Oh, awesome. Drinking one of my favorite Arkansas breweries.
Oh yeah. Okay, so I'm actually sponsored by Sierra Nevada Brewing Company, and I'm not drinking Sierra right now. But they're having trouble getting me beer out here. It's just
really
different.
Oh yeah.
Distribution.
Are you in Arkansas currently?
Yes.
Yeah. They the laws around alcohol acquisition there are really rough. It's a thing I don't super miss about living out there, is just like being, it'll be a Sunday and you're like, oh, I'd like to get a beer. And it's like, you can't. Sometimes it felt like living in the town from Footloose.
Let's see, a few Sundays ago, I was out of beer and I needed beer to watch football.
Yep.
And I realized it was Sunday. But it's only about 19 minutes to a liquor store across the border.
Oh yeah, you're up in Bella Vista, right?
I'm in town in Bentonville.
Oh, okay.
But it's still not far to go to the liquor store. Yeah.
God bless the Missouri border.
God bless them. Saved my life that day.
But I'm really stoked to chat. I think that you're doing some really cool stuff, and I'm just kind of stoked to pick your brain and hear about, kind of how your relationship with the outdoors, the environment, if we want to use a big fancy word, has evolved, what it looks like, and kind of how you got to where you are.
Awesome. For my viewers and listeners, can you introduce yourself?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So I'm Zoë Rom. I am the editor-in-chief at Trail Runner magazine. I'm originally from Arkansas, but I now live in Carbondale, Colorado, which is just down the hill from Aspen.
I know where Carbondale is.
Yeah.
My sister lives in Silt.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So,
have you ever been to see the trails out here? We have some pretty sweet trails.
Yeah. I have not ridden there before. I've done a ton of skiing at Snowmass and at Highlands. I love Highlands. That's one of my favorite mountains. Love that mountain. My friend Mark was working for the adaptive program there, and he was trying to get me to come out and ride for a while, but he's since moved away. But yeah, so I've been meaning to get there. There is actually another adaptive rider that lives in town. I'm pretty sure he's in Glenwood.
Nice.
He's in Glenwood, and he's got a similar bike to mine. So you do have local adaptive riders with off-road mountain bikes there.
Yeah, and actually Aspen does have a fairly robust adaptive program, both for its winter and summer sports, which I've always super appreciated, either through Challenge Aspen or Shindigo. So there's a lot of cool stuff going on up there. I feel super great to, being a part of a community that really tries to like grow itself and evolve itself past just like, white dudes skiing rad shit is pretty great.
Yes. I drive through there at least once a year, if not 2 or 3 times. So,
well, hey, next time, drop a line.
100%. And so that was your sister that I met, correct?
Yes. Yeah. She recently just started biking and has like totally fallen in love with it, and has been trying to just meet people up in the Northwest Arkansas, biking scene. Even though she's currently on the DL, she just got her ACL replaced, so she's not been doing a lot of biking lately, but that hasn't diminished her stoke towards meeting bikers at all.
Yeah, I was just there having beers with friends, and we were outside by the fire and came inside to say hello to another friend, and your sister was sitting at the table right there, and we started chit-chatting, and I just mentioned, I don't know how it came up. I can't remember, but I mentioned that when I'm riding my bike, in my mind, I'm trail running. And she was like, oh, you got to talk to my sister.
Yeah, that's actually a really great place to start, because, I was wondering, how long have you been trail running, and like, what does that mean, and what does that look like to you?
Well, that is a really good question. I guess physically, I've never been a trail runner because I didn't realize that I was one until after I was in a wheelchair. I've always been a runner my whole life. I've really enjoyed running. That feeling of your body just revving at a high level for extended periods of time. I'm addicted to that feeling. And I ran cross country and, did all that kind of stuff, and have grown up surfing and just running when there's no waves. And since I've been in a wheelchair and I've been on the trail, I realized that that's what I'm doing in my mind is running on the trail, and that's where my heart's at.
Yeah. How, like, what was that moment where it kind of clicked for you that, like, oh yeah, I'm out here trail running? Cause, like, to me, like, you and I run basically, the same kind of style of trail, and, like, definitely seems like we're enjoying them in more or less the same way. I'm wondering kind of like, was there a light bulb moment for you, or a moment where you just, like, really felt like that was how you were out there experiencing those trails?
God, another great question. Well, life in a wheelchair is pretty much relegated to the pavement, and so as a wheelchair user, well, let me back up a little bit. I found that I was like really starting to struggle with depression and things like that, and I came to a realization that it was, when I would be out in nature and have those rare opportunities, I realized that that feeling was gone. Things like skiing and surfing. I realized, wow, I feel a lot better after I've, got my hug from Mother Nature. I'm not depressed, and I'm actually ecstatic. And I started looking to the trail as somewhere where I wanted to be, and getting total FOMO, like, what, I want to go out on the trail. And so I started I had a stint where I was stuck in bed for a few months, and I completely geeked out on Google satellite images on trails. I spent literally like 3 months laying in my bed, just like following trails on Google satellite images on Google Maps. And I was like, holy crap, I just want to really be out on the trail. And so I was researching, things like off-road wheelchairs and things like that, so that I could, get out on the trail and get off road, get onto the beach. I really wanted to figure out a way to, surf on my own, be able to looking for ways to get across the sand. And in my research, I found this manufacturer of this bike that I ride. And I was like, holy crap, that thing's freaking awesome. So that's pretty much how it started. And that was in 2007. I got my first adaptive mountain bike and got on the trail for the first time.
Yeah. I think, something that comes up a lot, like hearing you speak, is that you've always had like a really consistent relationship with nature. How has that evolved or changed over time? And how has the wheelchair maybe even deepened that relationship that you've been exploring for years and years?
Sorry, putting my phone on Do Not Disturb. That's a great question. How has my relationship with nature evolved?
Mm-hmm.
Well, when I was young and so full of ego, it was more about fun and impressing people, and kind of fulfilling this. I don't want, hesitate to use the phrase adrenaline junkie, but satisfying this need for adrenaline, and it was more about that. And then now things are much calmer and it's more of kind of mental, emotional, and spiritual survival, because I know what I feel like when my relationship with nature is not happening. So when I'm out there, I try to do, instead of just like going crazy. Well, there is an element to that, but it's more about, I kind of really enjoy destroying myself. I don't know. Yeah, you smile. You can relate with that. I really enjoyed that.
Very relatable. That spiritual need to just like hurt a little bit or a lot bit.
Yeah, or a lot bit, definitely. I'm still, digesting that feeling and why it's so important for me to feel that. So that's the element there. And then, anything that involves adrenaline, just takes a lot of work for me now. I really have to really work up to it. But instead of it being more about that, it's more things like, I'll take off my glove. I'll stop, take off my glove and touch the ground for 60 seconds. How often do we actually ever touch the earth with our bare skin? Like very rarely through my day, especially being a chair, I've got this chair that's between me and the earth. And right now I've got my, my house, the slab base, between me and the earth. How often do we actually ever touch the dirt, like touch a tree, touch a leaf, get in the water? And I found that that's really important, and just for my mental health and well-being, just extremely grounding. Yeah, so it's more about that.
Yeah. Something else that comes up a lot in your work is this desire to like get off of concrete, right? Like, why do you think it's so important to have that experience of like actually riding or running on dirt, on gravel, on like the stuff the earth is actually made of, as opposed to this manufactured kind of like hard, pavement?
I just think it's how we're wired. It's how I'm wired anyways. And I mean, studies are showing, God, who's the author? His name is escaping right now. Author of like Child in the Woods. I think he coined the term nature deficit disorder. Do you know who I'm talking about?
I've heard of that.
I could look it up, but I don't want to take time to like pull out my phone. If we were on Rogan, we just tell Jamie to look it up, Jamie, who was the author's name? But yeah, I think the name of his book, several books. The one is a Child in the Forest or something, Child in the Woods or something like that. So, I mean, he talks about a lot about nature deficit disorder, and how, having a relationship with nature is not just good or important, it's vital to mental health and well-being. And studies are now coming out that prove this. And so, I mean, imagine how our like medical industry is going to change, and the health industry is going to change when this is, a proven thing that we need to, get a little bit of sunlight every day and move under the sky and get out on the trail or something on a regular basis. I believe that this is how we're wired, and that it's incredibly important. And the need for it is really growing because, we've got these things which are really cool and allow us to accomplish so much in our lives. I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing to the level that I'm doing it today without this thing and without this thing that we're talking on,
all this.
They're really cool things, and we're able to accomplish so much. But we're on them so much, and then therefore rendered so much more in need of that relationship with nature because of it. And our kids are, we've got this whole now multiple generations of people growing up attached to these things, and growing up with a very minimal, if any, relationship with nature. And we're wondering why there's all this crap happening in the world, you know? So to answer your question, why, I just think it's how we're wired. I think it's just super important.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. And I think, just to piggyback off that, and I wonder how this factors into what you do is that like when, again, like we're starting to see increasingly that research shows that, access to natural spaces, access to clean air, water, area to walk outside is not just something that should be a privilege, but the access should be like fundamentally a right. And so I'm wondering, how does wanting to maybe make these natural spaces more accessible and like not just make them be like a privilege granted to the few, but something that is accessible to the many factor into what you do on a daily basis?
Man, that's tough. Well, two things come into mind, and I hope I answer your question. And if I don't, let me know.
Yeah.
Well, I kind of let me start with my other point first. Because coming from California, there's so many people and so many people moving to California. It's so funny. Being here, people are like, oh, everybody from California moves here. I'm like, fuck you. Everybody from everywhere else moves to California. No.
Yep.
It's crazy. It's crazy. San Diego reminds me a lot of like, have you been to Honolulu?
I haven't.
Well, Honolulu reminds me, oh my God, this is by transitive property. San Diego reminds me of Honolulu, which reminds me of the bar scene in Star Wars, where it's just people from all over the galaxy, this like cornucopia hodgepodge of just all kinds of different people that are not from there, And San Diego has become a lot like that, where everybody there is from everywhere else. But my point is that like, there's so many people and the population's growing so fast that the open spaces, there's not enough open spaces. There's not enough open space. And it's an epidemic because, we want to respect nature and we want to preserve nature, but we also need open space to experience nature. So what do we do? There's all these open spaces that are protected, which is really important. And I support that 100%. But there's not enough space for all the people. So what do we do? It's really important. And it's a really good question for that, out here, there's a lot more space. There's a lot less people. The population density is exponentially smaller.
It's a different scene for sure. Like
totally
never in Arkansas scene. Did I have to like fight for trailhead parking the way that I do in Colorado.
Trailhead? I just ride from my house.
Oh, see, yeah. Well, I mean, where I live now, it's, I can just run from my house, but like I lived in Boulder for a couple of years and it was just like, oh my God, you had to get an Alpine start just to park, at the park in town. Which again, like is great. And like, I am the crowd, like I am not above it. Like I'm there for the same reason as everyone else and have no more level of like entitlement than anyone else who's there. But it is just this realization of like the human to trail space ratio is skewed in a lot of spaces. But again, we're all starting to realize more and more that like we all have this deep-seated need to connect with these outdoor spaces and get off our phones, but we're all kind of doing it on top of each other and in ways that maybe don't prioritize the needs of other folks too.
Yeah, and you being from Colorado, Denver, like Western Denver is having a big problem with the trails there. From what I hear from my friends there, like it's just crazy, and people like hikers are setting up booby traps for the mountain bikers and like all kinds of crazy shit, man. And as you said, it will, because we're doing it on top of each other. And that's the problem, maybe we're the virus.
Nature is healing.
We are kind of, by definition, we are kind of a virus, right?
Yeah. I mean, pretty rapid spread, out of control growth. There's, a lot of parallels there.
Someone told me, now I've heard this statistic a few times, that there's more people alive today than have ever lived in the history of the world.
I've heard that, but I feel like I would have to fact check that before I can fully sign off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but even if it's close,
Yeah.
it's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's a lot of people. We need more planets.
Yes.
If we're going to keep doing this.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was my first point to answer your question. And my second thing, you use the word right, like we have a right to these open spaces, and that's interesting. That's an interesting. I think I agree with you. Like, when it comes to a worldly, law standard, the laws of our world and our physical laws of our nation, human rights. But I have found that when I operate under the philosophy that I have no rights, and especially when it comes to nature and getting to these little corners of the world, my quality of life goes from here to here, because in that respect, under that blanket, it becomes my responsibility to get there and not somebody else's. It becomes my responsibility to figure it out, becomes my responsibility to adapt to the world, not the world's responsibility to adapt to me. So it's an interesting statement to say, like, we have a right to these open spaces. We do when it comes to the law, but man, that doesn't get me to the tops of mountains, that doesn't get me, out in the ocean,
Yeah.
living with the perspective of figuring it out gets me out there,
Mm-hmm. How do you feel about that? Like that idea that it's your responsibility to quote you, it's your responsibility to adapt to the world, not the world's responsibility to adapt to you. Like, what does that mean for you? And how do you feel about that? Like, do you wish things were different, or is that's just a worldview?
Well, I'm saying that with the perspective of just being a person, not being a person with forget disability. I'm not just saying that because I'm in a wheelchair and because I have a disability. I'm saying that for everybody. If everybody lives with this perspective, like imagine how much more you can accomplish. How does it make me feel? I think it's empowering. When we take the second I utter those words, I have no rights. The second, the result of that is taking responsibility for ourselves, and the result of that is empowerment. If I'm going to accomplish anything, get anywhere, get to the top of that mountain, go explore that country, swim with the dolphins, whatever it is, it's up to me. When I do talks, I talk about I use the metaphor of, pioneers, coming out west in wagon trains for the first time, and they're just subject to the environment, nature. There's mountain lions, there's bears, there's Native Americans, there's weather, there's all kinds. And they're, by the time they get to where they're going, it's a whole different group of people because a generation has gone by. Everyone that started is now dead, and it's all new people, that have spawned from those people. It's that the whole story of pioneers coming out west is insane to me, crossing mountains, and what that took. And so that when I say, like, we have no rights, or I have no rights, I use that metaphor of as if we're pioneers, because no one's been Zoe on this earth before. No one's been that Zoe. You're doing Zoe on this planet for the first time. And so there are no rules and there are no rights, and you're a pioneer. And so that makes me, when I'm in control of myself, that makes me feel empowered. Definitely.
What does that empowerment look like specifically in your life, right? Like, you talk a lot about, like, taking that responsibility for yourself to, like, hold yourself accountable, get yourself outside and exploring and adventuring in the ways that are meaningful to you. What what does that look like? Like, I mean, it's probably a good bit, probably takes a little bit more logistical oomph to get out the door than, someone 100%. Who just has to throw on a pair of shoes. I would love to know if you could just kind of, again, just walk me through like what that actually looks like. It's one thing to say like, oh, take responsibility, but what does that really mean for you?
You're a really good interviewer.
Well, thanks.
Yeah. I mean, obviously you're a writer. I've not read your stuff. I'm assuming you're a good writer because you're editor-in-chief of a large magazine.
In progress.
At a very young age.
Mm-hmm.
That's impressive. So I'm assuming you're a good writer.
I was at NPR previous to coming to Trail Runner. So audio interviewing is kind of my home turf, I guess.
You're good at it. That's
Thanks.
Really cool. Oh man, logistically, what does it look like for me? Well, forget being in a wheelchair because being human is my biggest problem. If you look at if you follow any of my stuff, I do a lot, I really do. But know that everything that you see takes this huge layer of molasses for me to push through first in order to do anything. I do struggle. I don't want to say depression is maybe too strong of a word, but lack of motivation and a propensity to be sad. I definitely have that. And an inclination of focusing on the negative. I'm a glass half empty kind of guy, naturally. So to be glass half full guy does take energy and effort for me. So everything I do, that's the first thing. Like waking up in the morning is probably the hardest thing I do. And coffee helps. Seriously, my love for coffee gets me out of bed. That sounds depressing, but it's to me, it's the beautiful plight of being human, of this, living this story arc every day, of just getting myself out of bed, dealing with the pain that I feel, physical pain that I feel, getting to that just cup of coffee, and then I, kind of breathe a sigh of relief. So there's that. And that is much harder than anything physical that I have to deal with being disabled. But yeah, when it comes to getting the trail, everything involves large pieces of equipment, large, expensive pieces of equipment. And let me just say to anybody listening or watching that just being able to put your shoes on and run out the door is a beautiful thing. Do not take it for granted. And if there's one thing that I miss the most or think about the most, it's that. There's a lot of beauty in the simplicity of that. For example, like when I travel, I don't have my bikes with me. I don't have my stuff with me. How do I exercise? Most people just bring a pair of shoes in their duffel bag. It can just go for a walk if they're staying at a hotel somewhere cold for a weekend. I don't really have that option because pushing my wheelchair any distance with a torn rotator cuff is not a good thing, So having that option and the simplicity of it is very beautiful. And I just want to motivate anybody to not take that for granted. So yeah, for me, logistically, it involves a huge bike, and it involves transporting that huge bike or a huge board and getting that huge board across the sand somehow, and figuring it out. But luckily I have this brain that works well for that. That just like, what I want to do, I've really thought I would like to do like, logistical training for like the military or something, like efficiency training, like people like they have efficiency classes in the military, and I think I want to try to teach those, when it comes to eliminating steps. That's like my whole life every day is eliminating steps, throughout the course of like every task, there's a list of subtasks, and minimizing those and trying to do things in the most efficient way possible. That's totally how my mind works. I'm super proud of that. I think if I had another go around in this life, I would probably go to school for like systems engineering or something like that, because that's how my mind works. I'd probably join the drama club too, instead of playing football. So to answer your question about how does that look like for me in logistics, it involves large pieces of gear and figuring out the most efficient system for transporting it. And usually, yeah.
Yeah. So you do a ton of stuff outside, right? Like, I mean, I like basically just run, like I've been, I'm from Arkansas, so like no skiing background. I've been like kind of trying to learn as an adult, which is, I think it's pretty tough. I'm not like all that natural an athlete. So anytime you're moving fast with like planks of wood on your feet, I'm kind of like, oh. But like you're like a hugely talented multi-sport athlete. Is there a certain like way of getting outside that like you identify with most, or that you feel particularly like, how do you, I don't know, like what does it say on your LinkedIn that you do? You're like outdoor athlete LinkedIn.
Well, first of all, thank you for saying I'm talented. I don't think that I am talented.
I see you going off some jumps that like, again, I'm not a trained, I'm not an expert, but
well,
they seem pretty.
Those jumps are very small compared to other people that are doing those jumps. Bigger jumps. Anything I do like takes me a long time and a lot of repetition. I have to work really hard at everything I do. I'm not like I'm marginally talented, in a lot of things. But anything you see me do, like it really takes a lot of work and a lot of repetition. I don't pick things up quickly. And I wish I could be one of those people that says, oh yeah, I picked it up really fast, but no, not at all. It takes me a really long time, which is interesting because, having a YouTube channel, making videos and things like that, it's kind of something people expect. They expect you to be good. And then when you're not, they're kind of like, oh, why were you so scared? I'm like, because I suck, bro. I'm not good. I'm making videos because I'm good at making videos and I'm good in front of a camera and I'm marginally good at the stuff I'm doing. You know what I mean? Just because I'm making these videos doesn't mean I'm great, So thank you for saying that. And then, yeah, I do. I wear many hats. I think that the person I am at my core is an outdoorsman and an adventure seeker. That's what I want to put on all my stuff. But yeah, many hats. I work in sales. I work in consulting. I work in speaking. And there's a different website for each one of those. But, I guess, and this might be a little bit of bragging right now, but I get to say that I'm a pro athlete. And that's really fun for me to say. And I really like being able to say that. I work as a pro consultant. I ride, trails and features and tell them what I think. And that's super fun. And get paid to do it. I get paid to ride my bike, which definitely pinching myself every day. Well, I say that, but I have the kind of mind where I have to remind myself that I'm happy. Like, hey, dude, you don't have to be bummed out. You don't have to be sad. Like, you have a fucking incredible life. It's crazy that I have to remind myself of that. But that's one hat that I'm wearing now, and I'm really, really proud to say it out loud. Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely sounds like a pretty resonant mindset for, I think, endurance athletes generally, right? Like if your brain was just fine being happy and still, like maybe you wouldn't push yourself to like go off jumps or to like ride your bike for like a long ass time or run for a long ass time. You just be like, oh yeah, I'm cool hanging out by my fire and drinking a beer. But I think, something that a lot of folks resonate with is kind of like, if having sometimes that glass half empty mindset is kind of what keeps you going in a way, right? Like it keeps you striving for like more, like, oh, can I build a better trail? Can I go ride it better? Like, how do I try to keep filling this glass while recognizing that like it's never really going to feel full.
That's a really good point. That's something I need to remember, because I'm hard on myself, for feeling blue or whatever. That's a really good point. I'm glad that you said that. That's something I need to remind myself of.
I feel like I see I recognize some of those similar tendencies in myself, and like, I don't always love them, but I do feel like they, when I can recognize them and make peace with them, they can help me be a better runner, writer, something.
Yeah. And like, if, maybe we didn't feel that way, or you didn't feel that way, maybe you just be playing video games and be happy with that, Yeah.
Glass half full, hanging out on the couch all day.
Which I do that sometimes. Usually on Sundays when I'm watching football.
Yeah. So you get to go ride trails and basically like give feedback and help develop them. What does that look like? I'm really curious about that process.
Oh, it's actually so fun. It's such a fun process. Okay, so imagine me out on the trail on my bike, and I've got a little fanny pack with my phone, and I'm riding a trail, and then, usually with a support rider that I've scheduled to be with me. And when I run into an issue, I stop, I save my GPS location, and I take a photo and take notes of the issue. And I use GAIA maps. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, we own them, or we're part of the same family now. Yay, GAIA.
So I use GAIA, which is a little glitchy.
We're working on it.
But I like it.
It's a different department. We love them though.
What's good about it is everybody uses it. So when I'm working with, a trail builder group or land management, if I just, create these waypoints in GAIA, it's easy to share with them. And then when they're out on the trail, they've got it on their phone, and they can, navigate to these points super easy and share them with their crew. And it just, oh my God, like doing everything in GAIA, like is super quick, but and it's creating these PDF reports that takes me days, it's backwards. It's totally backwards. The PDF reports are just totally archaic. But I do that, as part of it. So yeah, so I'm on the trail with my phone using GAIA, saving waypoints, taking pictures, taking notes. And then, even when I'm on my like personal rides, if I run into something or whatever, I'll do the same thing. And I get to bill for parts of my personal rides too.
Working hard, always.
Always working it. I don't know, working hard, working it. So that's like the trail auditing portion of what I do. There's also the pro consulting, where they build something and they say, "Hey, Jeremy, come ride this and tell us what you think." There's that portion of it, which is that's the best part. Mm-hmm. That's where, okay, I show up, I go ride, put the pads on. It's usually, jumps and things like that. And I ride it and I tell them what I think and give feedback. That's probably the funnest part of what I do. And then the other part is when I'm involved in an actual build project, where there's a builder who has hired me as a consultant on the project that they're hired on, so that they can put the adaptive stamp of approval on it. And that's really fun too. And sometimes I get to jump in the equipment and run the equipment too. That's really cool, because I can't really grab a shovel or whatever and go do, trail work, so in the equipment, I get to contribute to the physical job. And so that feels really good.
So like, are you like literally in like a little backhoe, moving dirt, cutting stuff, moving rocks? Like, what does that look like?
Yes, I have to give credit to my friend Chris Orr, who is known in the world of trails as the trail guru. He is one of the best people on this planet. And he taught me how to drive a skid steer, a skiddy, you call it on the job, the little bobcat thing you see, little shovel. He taught me how to drive that thing around. And so I get to jump in the skiddy and usually be the skiddy guy is usually the delivery guy. Well, which that's what I've been on most jobs where I'm delivering rocks or dirt to whoever the excavator operators are. And while they're building stuff, I deliver the rocks and dirt to them so they can build with it. Super fun. It's really fun. Exhausting work, but very, very satisfying.
Yeah. So like when you're out riding trails, like what are you looking for to make it better? Like what are the things you're taking notes about? You're saying like, this isn't going to fly, or like this trail could be really cool if you did this.
Yeah. I'm always thinking about that stuff constantly. I don't know if better is the right word, because I don't know if it makes the trail better, but maybe just more inclusive. And we're working towards the 80% rule here, where you're never going to make everybody happy. With trail work and stuff like that. There's always going to be somebody that's bummed, not stoked on it. But the rule is the 80% rule. If you can, stoke most people out, then that's a good thing. And when it comes to adaptive riders, usually, we never want to change the nature of a trail or, mountain bikers use the phrase dumb down. We never want to dumb down trails. But if it just takes, a couple, minor edits to allow an entire other user group through a trail, that's a no-brainer in my estimation, So usually I'm looking for those things, like the low-hanging fruit. What are the couple minor things that have, little to zero environmental impact to get a whole other user group down this trail? That's usually what I'm looking at,
What are those things specifically that you're looking for?
Man, off camber is my nemesis. When a trail's like this and there's a drop off, that bike is wide. It can flip over, and I flip.
Not that.
I have flipped down a mountain before. I have done that, and it's really scary, and it can happen really quickly and easily. So that's the one thing I'm looking for. Off camber situations or whatever. And pinch points. Pinch points is the other thing. The bike is wide, it is wide. So, but the cool thing about that is the equipment is progressing so fast. And soon, all the work that I'm doing now is going to be moot because the equipment is becoming more and more capable, like very quickly.
Yeah. Put yourself out of business is like a pretty good goal to have.
Yeah. I'd rather be out of business and be able to go more places,
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you tell me just a little bit about the equipment that you use? I know this is like super rudimentary and hopefully it's not too boring for folks, but I'd love to know about your bike. Like what gets you out there?
No, man, my bike is way cooler than I am. That's for sure. Yeah, that thing gets a ton of attention. It's a beautiful feat of engineering, honestly. And if you're, ever in front of it in person, you'll see like, wow, this is beautiful. If you know anything about machining, about welding, in engineering, it's a beautiful piece of machinery. So there's a few different types of bikes. When I first became an adaptive rider, the only bikes that were available were either a bike similar to mine, maybe a little smaller, with a like what I mean by similar is 2 front tadpole configuration where it's 2 front wheels and one rear wheel. And it's 1 rear wheel because that's the drive wheel. Mm-hmm. And that bike could climb anything, but had no suspension whatsoever, fully rigid. It was either that bike or the extreme exact opposite, a 4-wheel bike with crazy like trophy truck suspension, but was only gravity fed. So, basically a bike that could downhill anything or a bike that could climb anything. And my bike that I have now was the first with both a drivetrain and full suspension. Now that old bike that could climb anything could climb a lot more. And that 4-wheel bike with suspension had way more suspension than this bike now. But having both is a game changer. With the bike that could climb anything, I went on awesome hikes with that. But I'd ride the bike park and I was just getting jarred, just destroying my back, and any bump having some suspension, you can accommodate some off camber. With no suspension at all, forget it. I think flips over super easy. And then, so I sold that and I got one of the 4-wheel gravity bikes. And I have never sent it more in my life than I did on that bike. Like that bike was insane what it could do. But I started venturing out in the backcountry and my friends were pushing me, and that just sucked. Or I was reaching back and pushing it like a wheelchair and that just sucked. Mm-hmm. So that's why it's so cool to have this bike with the drivetrain. It can climb, and now with the power assist too, like it can climb like crazy. And with the full suspension, it's everything all in one. It's pretty beautiful piece of machinery. And
yeah. I mean, just like super dumb question. How do you propel it? Like, are you pushing it? Like
that was the next thing I was going to say. And usually the first question anybody with a little bit of an engineering mind asks is like, how do you propel it? And then how do you steer so there's a hand crank. So there's a handlebar and a hand crank. And then the question of engineering is how then do you steer when your hands are on the hand crank? Because your hands are not on the handlebar. There's a chest pad in front with cables that go through the frame and are attached to the bottom of the stem. The stem is what attaches the handlebar to the bike, to the steering column. And I steer with my chest.
Huh.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
That seems like a really physical way of riding a bike.
It is. It's actually, it's completely different than riding a 2-wheel bike. When I'm cranking, there's a lot of core involved in that. That feels really good. It's not precision steering though. You need to be on like wide open stuff, usually fire road or like double track. It's kind of like a boat where like I'll end up overcorrecting and I'll end up zigzagging a lot. And that's kind of why I prefer, the thing that I say is I like to climb the wide stuff and downhill the fun stuff. Mm-hmm. So I usually downhill like the climb the fire roads and things like that, which is considered like not the fun thing to do in mountain biking.
Yeah.
Same with probably, is it similar in trail running too? Or like you kind of like rather.
Yeah, kind of. So, like, I mean, I have like a little bit of a biking background, but like I'm it's just like when you just have to put your head down and grind, like why make it harder by being on something like really narrow and pinchy and like, I don't know, pumpy when you could just like get the climbing done and then like bomb down.
See, that's how I work. But in mountain, that's how that's how I think. But in mountain biking, mountain bikers prefer to be on the trail, climbing the narrow stuff, because, it's windier and traverses, and it's, and less pitch. And, it's seen, climbing fire roads is seen as heinous in the mountain biking world. But I get my heart rate a lot higher when I'm cranking with two hands. And I'll explain that. Like, so when I'm on wide open stuff like fire road, I can steer with my chest, because I don't need precision steering, and then therefore crank with two hands. And I'm getting my heart rate a lot higher than when I'm climbing trail. When I'm on trail, with the power assist, I can crank with one hand and then steer with the other. And so on trail, that's usually what I'm doing, cranking with one hand and steering with the other. And cranking with one arm, I don't get my heart rate near as high as I do cranking with two. So that's why I like to climb the heinous stuff and downhill the fun stuff.
Yeah.
For that reason there.
Yeah, it makes all the sense in the world to me. I'm like, I think with running, it's like fairly uphill oriented, and like I do a bit of schemo. So it's like, I'll just give me all the climbing in one shot, so it's over with.
Yeah. But that's when I feel like the most like I'm running. Mm-hmm. When I'm like cranking with two hands, I get a lot on the beach too. I'll take my bike out on the beach at really low tides, and at low tide, I can get like miles and miles on the beach. And when I'm just like, like, and I'm kind of moving back and forth like this, cranking, that's when I most feel like I'm running. And that's when it feels the best to me, more than the downhilling and the fun stuff. That's all rad. I love it all. But I think my favorite is that feeling where I'm like in a rhythm, like cranking back and forth, and getting that pump feeling. That's what I think I enjoy the most.
Yeah. So for folks that may not have the same, or just have like maybe not quite as intimate a relationship with the outdoors, nature, the environment, whatever you want to call it, like what advice would you have for them about starting to build that connection, for getting outside more, right? Like, I think, obviously it's like not that easy for you to just, get out there and start enjoying it. So maybe for people for whom it's also not easy, or for who like they are the person that can just put their shoes on and get out the door, like from your perspective, like why should people do that? And what advice do you have for them?
Get a dog. Seriously, dog gets you outside in the morning, get you outside in the evening. If you get a dog, you better fucking walk them, because otherwise that's abuse, And it feels so good. I don't know. It feels so good to be outside in the early morning in the cold, walking your dog, sipping a cup of coffee. I love that feeling.
You have a dog?
I don't right now. My dog passed away in 2014.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So it's been 7 years that I have not been ready. But I'm really close to getting a dog. I've actually been online looking at the Humane Society here. You know what? I might just get drunk and go down there and get a dog.
I've definitely been that person who like has had a couple too many beers and gets on Pet Finder and is just like messaging all the local border collies.
Border collie, that's the dog you like. You like border collies? That's cool.
Now I have an Aussie Shepherd, but
that's
herding dogs. Was looking for a runner right off the bat.
That's what I want. I want a trail dog. Mm-hmm. My last dog was a black lab, and he was not an athlete. Like so intelligent, but so lazy, fucking lazy. Like I had to get him it'd be noon and he'd still be in bed. I'm like, dude, like you want to get up and you just like go back to sleep. Like wouldn't go pee like all day. Like this freaking dog is so lazy. So that was awesome. He was the best dog that will ever live on this planet. But I do want like a dog to run with me on the trail. And so I've been looking at Aussies, but I don't think I could handle the hair, the shedding.
It's a lot of shedding.
They have a lot. So I'm looking at Aussie Doodles,
Mm.
Which I think would be my first choice. But I don't feel right getting a bred dog when there's all these dogs that need homes, and I don't want a puppy either. I did the puppy thing once. It was awesome, but I don't have the patience to do that right now. I don't have the time either. So I think I want an adult dog. I think I'm just going to go down to the shelter and pick dogs that I vibe with. I think that's all I'm going to do. Yeah. So that's my advice to people to get out of the house is get a dog, go rescue a dog, and don't neglect them. And by that, you will be getting outside. And that is awesome.
It's like the most practical approach to that question that most people would take that and be like, Emerson always said that like, blah, blah, like it could turn into an opportunity for navel gazing. But I appreciate your, like the approach that I would imagine a systems engineer would take, which is like, oh, you don't need inspiration. You need a system for getting outside. Like the breakdown isn't that you lack motivation. It's that you lack the appropriate system.
Exactly right. Oh man. And then the other thing too, mountain biking is something that's very accessible that, I think like similar sports, skiing, you got to go somewhere, you got to buy all the gear. Surfing, you got to go somewhere, you buy all the gear. Skateboarding, you can do it out of your house, but it's not so easy. 90% of people can jump out on a bike and ride it from their house, So other than a dog, get a bike, And like, see, the thing is for a lot of people and for me too, creating accountability is also a really good thing, So like here they have all these group rides all the time. They're freaking all, there's a group ride like every night somewhere. Like joining a cool group or joining a group ride, a weekly thing, get you out of the house, get you moving outside, which is the key for me. It's not just being outside and it's not just moving. It's the combination of the two for some reason is so powerful. That's the equation, is putting those two things together somehow. Just going for a walk, that's good. That's a good step in the right direction. It's a good thing, Sometimes you just got to put your headphones in and just go walk outside, But if you can combine that with getting your heart rate up and touching the ground, I think that's the equation for me that helps me feel the best in my brain hole.
I love that. Is there anything else you wish I had asked that you'd like to add? I know this has been kind of a wide-ranging and all over the place conversation, but yeah, is there anything else that we just didn't quite explore to the length that you maybe wanted to?
I don't know. I had no expectations.
Other than what I told you. Any conversation.
Other than what I said in the email about I wanted to focus on what it means to have a relationship with nature in our conversation. Other than that, no, I didn't have any. No.
Awesome. Well, yeah.
Do you feel like you have what you need to write your article?
I think so. I'll probably have to follow up just because I can actually probably stop recording.
I say keep recording.
More.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
just in case. Get all the tape.
Never stop recording. Yeah. I think all this stuff is really cool. People are interested in hearing all this stuff.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, from my perspective, like I am wanting to write a feature. So, just in terms of like trying to construct it, I'll probably have to reach back out with some like super boring detail oriented questions. Just like about, like to kind of hold the larger structure, which is like, this guy has a really cool relationship with nature and here's like what he does in his daily life to execute on that essentially. And like why that's important, because it's kind of fitting into our environmental issue. And I think that the reason that this story is cool for that is because like, accessibility is something that's not often talked about, right? Like we talked about, like, if you accept, which I do, the premise that like getting outside is good for you, I feel like the next logical step is that like, oh, then like we need to make it accessible. Like that's like the next, like if you say this is like important for our mental and physical health and I only want me to have access to it, and like I don't care if like other people can't, like that to me, I'm like, I feel like it follows that if this is a good thing, we should make it accessible to all people. And I think that your work approaches that in like a really cool, fun, and interesting way. And that this is kind of a more compelling way to talk about like trail building and accessibility, as opposed to just, getting into like, oh, trail runners never do anything to build trail. And like, we're kind of the worst outdoor recreation group in terms of stewardship and cultivating infrastructure. And like, I'm just like a total nerd for infrastructure, and you are involved in it at the ground level as both an athlete and a consultant. And I think it's really cool to approach the question of like, how do we make trail more accessible, and like, why should we bother from that perspective?
That's super interesting. That's really, really interesting. I mean, I guess the problem for a lot of people is motivation, and if, they need to access less motivation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if there's fewer logistics and, basically if they don't have to jump in the car to get to a trail or, get to somewhere where they feel like they have a relationship with nature, that's so much better, to have trails as a part of developments, and things like that. I think is really, that's my mindset. The fewer logistics I have, the more likely I am to make that decision late in the afternoon when I'm tired to get out.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are similar in that way, where you come home from work, they're tired. I think of people like my little brother. He's a truck driver. He works really, really, really hard, and he's exhausted. He gets up for work at 2 a.m., and by the time he gets home from, he works 60-hour weeks, and by the time he gets home from work, he's exhausted. The last thing he's going to do is, scoop up someone in his family and make them get in the car and go drive somewhere, to go for a hike.
Yeah.
That's a lot. There's no way. There's no fucking way. But if there's, a trailhead, a local pathway, down the street in their development, maybe he might take his dog out and go walk on that, and although that's not, an epic experience, but it's a good thing, when you work hard and you don't have the time or space or energy to go on some crazy epic adventure all the time,
Totally. And I just think that like the less that we require people to be like superhumans, like I'm like, let's make it so easy for people to get outside. Like, let's make it easy for you to go run, walk, bike, like do whatever you want to do on trail. Like, let's bring the trail to your front door and make it as accessible as possible. Just because I don't think the bar should be like, oh, you have to be like, a freaking superhuman athlete, like I just think that like lowering that barrier to entry without like dumbing it down, right? Like these should be good trails, and like they should be something that can make you aspire to be like a super athlete. But I don't think that like the price of entry should be living in a specific place, having specific equipment, like all these various levels of privilege that just like most people don't have. Because again, like all, what we're learning more and more is that access to these things isn't just something that like should be a privilege, but is something that should, be accessible to all folks. Like you should be able to go be outside. You should be able to get away from cars and pollution and sound and, go see what the sky looks like.
That is the key. The sky. The sky is the largest part of nature and accessible from pretty much everywhere, unless you're incarcerated. But even then they get time outside, and at the very minimum, okay, yeah, it's winter, it's cold outside, but putting on a jacket is nothing compared to what I have to do to get outside. Like, trust me,
Yeah.
like put your jacket on, put on your shoes, and walk around the block. At least do that. Get under the sky at the very minimum. And it might not be the most amazing experience you've ever had, but whatever you're feeling, whether it's good or bad or in the middle somewhere, most likely, guaranteed it'll go up at least a notch, you know?
It's never worse when you have a sky appreciation moment.
Sky appreciation moment. I like that. That's kind of my encouragement to everybody out there.
Yeah. But, I think I'll just follow up with, again, like a couple super probably boring fact-checky questions just to make sure I'm being accurate in how I'm representing you, what you do, all of that. And would also probably just love to talk to another buddy that you have, just so I can like kind of triangulate your experience. Like if there's someone you ride with or work with, it's always great, like to paint a more interesting and accurate picture of someone. It's never want to be like, here is Zoe Alone's perception of this guy. It's like, well, let's talk to his friend. Let's talk to his, the guy he rides with. Let's talk to his barista. Let's get some other voices.
My bartender.
Your bartender. If only I could always get someone's bartender. That would be the ideal.
Who would be the best person to talk to? Probably my buddy Chris that I mentioned earlier, who taught me how to drive the skid steer. He'd probably be the best one to talk to because he's in the trails world. He's a ripping rider, and we've ridden together a lot. So he might be a good person to talk to.
Sweet. Yeah, totally. I mean, again, like the guy that taught you how to use and operate heavy machinery, probably going to be a pretty interesting interview.
He's got a pretty cool brain. Awesome. Definitely.
Well, yeah, I think that's all I had for you.
Sweet. Thanks for hanging out.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for, enjoying a beer. I know it's a little bit later in Arkansas than it is. I
usually would have cracked a second one by now, but I didn't want to say, hold on a second. I'm probably going to crack another one after we.
Yeah, I'm again also moments away from doing the same as soon as I straighten out my notes a bit. But yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to chat. I've been loving. I've watched probably way too many of your videos.
No way, that's cool.
Totally. Did the super deep creep into the YouTube, into the website, full deal, full social media spelunk expedition.
Well, that's the right thing to do as a writer, is do the appropriate research. And
well, it starts off being I'm a good journalist, and then it ends up just being oh my God, this is a sick video. It starts at a much more high-minded place than I think it usually ends up.
The videos are going to be getting a lot better here really soon.
Yeah. Did you get some cool gear, cool equipment?
Well, no, I got a cool person.
Ooh.
And it looks like, nothing's for sure yet, but it looks like, the town of Bentonville and some other entities are going to be coming together to sponsor my channel for next year.
Hell yeah. That's awesome.
And that involves a really good cameraman and editor.
Yeah. Are you liking it up? Are you full-time Beeville resident?
First question, am I liking it? Yes. Well, there's pros and cons to everything, Yeah. My heart is in San Diego, so that's the hard part. I've lived there for so long, it's hard to my heart not to be there, So it's a major adjustment, is what I'm saying. That's the hard part. But this place is sick. This place
Arkansas is a pretty unique, quirky zone.
Yeah, it is quirky, but it's sick. That I get to go ride my bike straight out of my house. So am I liking it? Yes. Oh, wait, what was the second part of your question?
Oh, just, are you full-time there? Are you
no, I'm not full-time. I'm actually on my way back west for the winter here in 2 weeks.
Nice.
So my plan is to be here in the spring and fall when it's nice. The fall is beautiful.
Oh, it's awesome.
And
it's long. It's long there.
Yeah, it was pretty solid. So I've been here for... Gosh, I got here early October. So October, November, and then now into December. So 2.5, not quite. 3 months. Yeah, 3 months I'll have been here. This round. heading west. I'll spend a week on the road, and I'll be back to San Diego. I have a little studio converted garage overlooking the water.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
Looking forward to getting back into my routine of my training regimen. I have a trainer there. I have way more options for exercise, so I'm looking forward to that. That's kind of the main thing I miss. No, I'm not. And then I'll be in San Diego in the winters and summers is the plan.
Yeah, well, that sounds like a pretty ideal setup. The surfing in Bentonville leaves a lot to be desired.
Oh, that is true. I do miss the water. Yeah, I try to get in the water.
Beaver Lake's no substitute for the ocean.
Beaver Lake's awesome.
Beaver Lake is pretty awesome, though.
I was definitely drunk in Beaver Lake this summer.
I mean, you can't go to Arkansas and not be drunk in Beaver Lake. It's like I don't know, the closest thing we might have to a state sport, probably.
It's really cool. It's so big.
It's huge, yeah. And like got all kinds of weird little nooks and crannies and like really fancy houses, and then people that have been there since like Reconstruction, holding down the fort. It's interesting.
How often do you come back?
Usually once a year. Yeah. I like to hang out actually. I mean, because Colorado, not a lot of trail running this time of year because it's it's not that snowy this year, but I like to come out around New Year's, and there's like a mountain race that Arkansas. What people don't realize is that Arkansas is actually hella steep, sneakily. And I'm doing a marathon in January that has like 8,000 feet of gain, and it's like super rugged and awesome and weird, and like it's just like
8,000.
Yeah,
8,000. And
yes.
How many miles?
26.
Solid.
Yeah, like I mean, it's something that like if it was in Colorado, it would like sell out years in advance and would be like a whole big deal. And because it's in Arkansas, it's like free, and they give out chili at the end, and it's like the aid stations just have like Fireball and like toast.
Fireball and toast.
It's a pretty scrappy affair. But that's kind of what I like. At least
put butter on the toast.
Yeah, I usually don't make it too far past the Fireball, to be honest.
I like your style. Oh man, that totally reminds me. I've got this crew in San Diego where I live. This group of guys are the best surfers in the area. They frickin' rip, and they're amazing distance runners. They're amazing athletes. And I just took them out in my home canyon for a jaunt. We did 16 miles. I was on my bike and they were running. It was so fucking rad. It was so rad. These guys maybe the last mile and a half, they were tired.
Yeah.
But like up until like 14 miles, we were just joking and laughing, and they were completely fine. Like these guys are just such amazing athletes. And this was a no joke ride. I think it was like close to 1,500 vertical for a 16-mile run. It's pretty solid. A lot of undulating,
rolling, punchy, probably.
Very punchy, lots of loose terrain, And what I realize is the downhill for runners is really difficult.
Oh yeah, that's what people always think it's the uphills, but the thing that destroys you is the downhills, because that impact just blows your muscles up.
Yeah, and you got to slow yourself down, and so the energy that requires and the muscle power that requires. Yeah, it was super interesting. So that was a really cool experience. So I felt like I was like out trail running with the boys.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It was really awesome. So hopefully get to do that again soon. But the reason why I thought about that, I thought about like, well, I'm probably not going to be here when you're here, but it'd be cool to coordinate a trail run.
That's cool. For sure.
I feel like that would be a cool article to write. Like, don't write about what I think, write about what you think and what the experience was like for you,
How long are you out in California?
Till March.
Okay. I'm trying to find some warmer trail races for my spring agenda. So maybe I'll try to swing one out that direction.
That would be freaking rad. But I'll also probably drive through Colorado on my way out in March.
Yeah, so we'll definitely drop a line. You know, I'm mostly here. When I'm not in Arkansas, I'm here. So with a few stints to doing some travel in California as well to train for some stuff. And yeah.
Where in California?
I'm running Western States, which is like between Olympic Valley and Auburn. So I'm coming out for that in June, and then I'm training on that trail for a weekend in May. So northern Sacramento.
Very cool.
Zone.
That's freaking awesome.
I love that area. It's so cool. Like the trails are just compare, like Colorado's great, love it, but everything here is like so steep and like loose and hard that it's like awesome to go out to California where like the trails are all really well taken care of and like don't feel like they hate you.
That's how it seems.
The ones I've run.
That's how it seems. It seems like California is a mess. They seem well taken care of. That's cool.
The ones I've been on like a lot of the like more famous like specific trail running trails, just because like the Western States Trail is like such a thing that it's like fairly manicured by trail standards, and it's always kind of a treat. Plus the oxygen at that level is pretty great.
Plus the oxygen. That's hilarious. That's hilarious. Okay, well, we'll look for running events in Southern California, but probably March in Colorado. Yeah. I've got Sedona Mountain Bike Festival the first week of March, and that kind of kicks off my tour. I plan to be on the road for the month, almost the entire month of March, at least 3 weeks, at least. And then from Sedona, making my way east, and I have to be back in Bentonville for the Professional Trail Builders Conference at the end of March. So,
well, that sounds like it could be a really fun and/or super boring conference, depending.
Oh, I freaking love it.
Yeah,
trail builders are like the coolest people on the planet. First of all, yeah. But I get to stay in my lane. You know, I don't have to talk about like, you know, motivational speaking type stuff. I get to talk about
just dudes with tools and heavy machinery being dudes.
That part of it. But I get to talk about, you know, the trail work and the rating system and you know, grading, you know, the mathematics involved and like grading scales, trails on a curve, you know, that kind of stuff. And it's all informational stuff I can recite in my sleep, and really fun to talk about. I'm really passionate about it. So
that's awesome.
It's definitely fun, and it's a good party. It's a very good party.
Yeah.
So after Sedona, I plan to go to probably Moab and then Western Slope, Colorado, and then continue on through. So I could totally stop in the Rockies.
Definitely. Or let me know, even if you're in Moab, because that's like only 3 hours from where we are. And I'm always trying to get to the desert I'm a Southerner. So like winter's not really my jam. So I spend a lot of the spring out that way.
Cool. Well, I'll definitely be in Moab in the spring. And I want to post up there for like a week, probably.
Sweet. Yeah. Well, let me know when you're there. That's almost easier than getting out to Carbondale, which can sometimes feels like definitely not the center of the universe.
The second week of March.
Okay. Sweet.
Yep. That's the
primo season out there.
It's so beautiful. It's so fucking rad. I love it there.
Yeah, I love it. I love it out there. I mean, it's like definitely not as much of a like center for running as it is for like biking or even just jeeping, but the trails are amazing and the weather is great.
I saw David Goggins running through there. I did.
Was he training or was he doing that race? Did you catch him during the race?
I'm pretty sure he was in a race. I was kind of like, I just saw a glimpse of him. Everyone was like, "Oh, there's David Goggins!" I was like, "Oh yeah, crazy!" But I'm pretty sure it was an event.
Yeah, he does this like 200-mile race out there every year, which like I'm a crazy person, but 200 miles is like next level, or it's 240, which is like 140 more miles than I really can even wrap my brain around. It's a long.
You can wrap your brain around 100. Have you done 100-miler before?
I have. Yeah, it's actually I think my preferred distance.
I'm actually kind of impressed.
Yeah. You don't go that fast. You go slower.
Exactly. If you pace yourself, you can do anything.
Exactly. Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, I kind of want to do it faster.
That's really cool. That's super impressive.
It's, yeah. I mean, again, like, I think there's something about that, like, endurance athlete brain where you're like, I need a little more from life.
Tell us more about that.
Oh, I just, like, presumably there's people who are able to like just be joggers and like feel fine, and like that's great, but I think that there's just another subset of people who, more than just feeling okay or like it's enough to like walk their dog, have to, ride downhill mountain bike trails or run 100 miles or like, kind of be pushing themselves to feel what they want to feel or feel something, anything. Not in like a sad way, but in like a way that like, that's kind of where the cool, interesting stuff happens, right? Like you probably, like there's that thing to be said for like really loving how you feel when you're pushing yourself on climbs or like riding an element in, like on the downhill section that's like particularly challenging. Like I really like that challenge.
I need like all the levels. Like I'm busy and every day, like I need my like 45-minute like quick exercise, like just like efficiently just get done and like check that box for the day. So I feel good about myself. Like that's like the bare minimum, I need that. I need like the regular rides for me, distance wise, that's like, maybe 8 to 12 miles or so. And then like once a week or so, or maybe even once every 2 weeks, I need like the more of epic ride, like more in the 20s to 30 mile range. Like I need that. And then like maybe once a year or so, I need the 100 mile, the ultra epic adventure,
Yeah, because it's not like something you can do all the time. Because like that to me, I think, there's a certain point I'd sort of be like, I'm questioning your dosage. Like maybe bring it down a notch, but you
might be crazy.
You might be like real crazy.
You might have a problem.
Yeah. But yeah, I also am that person who just like is like, I love walking my dog. I have a lazy Aussie, which again, like I love because it gets me out doing something besides just like training with like my head down and being really serious. Like she likes to just like hike and like zoom and like run around and like roll in dirt. And I think that like there's, a part of me that like kind of needs that little buddy who encourages me to just like walk and like be outside and look at the sky and like sniff stuff and like don't worry about going a certain distance or speed and just like, be out there.
I like that. I like that a lot. Super cool.
Yeah.
Do you want people to follow you?
Sure. Yeah. Or they can follow Trail Runner also.
So follow Trail Runner. Their Instagram is it at Trail Runner or at Trail Runner Mag or something like that?
At Trail Runner Mag.
A Trail Runner Mag.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I'm at _flowers_Z. Made it a tough one.
Wait, made it a tough one's not part of it.
Oh, no. Like I just have a really crazy screen name because all the good ones were taken.
Carrot at _flower _Zoe.
Z. Just Z.
Z _ made it _ So wait, it's at carrot _flower _Z.
That's correct.
Boom. And you actually have pretty freaking cool photos. I did a little bit of research that I had time for.
Yeah. See, I like a good journalist would.
I would not consider myself a journalist. I do have a blog. I have 2 blogs, and I may be, I'm very far behind. Let's just say that. I do like to write though. I do. That's probably something people don't know about me is I do enjoy writing. I'd like to think I'm good at it. I don't know if I'm good at it or not. I like the way I write. I am working on a novel though.
Oh, that's awesome.
I am, I have a lot more to do.
Yeah.
I haven't written for a very long time, but I am at 19,000 words right now.
Oh, wow.
Currently.
Nice.
Which is maybe a third. My goal is 60,000 words. So I'm maybe a third of the way done. Yeah, maybe this will motivate me.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to hang around writers a little more.
Oh,
Less,
it's awful.
less
We're always
writers
talking
and
about
more
like, oh
writers.
man, I'm behind on my deadline. You always just feel guilt. It's just a guilty group circle.
Being a writer is a constant guilty conscience.
Feeling like, oh, I should be writing the whole time. That's all it is. You're either writing or being like, oh man, I should probably be writing.
Man, maybe that's why I feel so guilty all the time. Because I haven't worked on my book for a few years.
You're being a writer.
I'm being a writer. Oh, maybe something I could be less hard on myself about. That's cool. Okay, so people are going to follow you there. I appreciate you taking the time. And I look forward to being on the trail with you sometime, hopefully in the future. That would be cool.
For sure. Hopefully somewhere
and
warm.
That would be a second article, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Wait, so you said something really cool. I barely caught it. You said something about you want to do a feature with this.
Yeah. Yep. So like,
what does that mean?
Several pages, big photos, big sexy like spread. Like really do it up. Not just like I talked to him for an hour, but like fully like try to explore some stuff at length.
That's rad. Oh my God, that's super exciting. Do you want photos or do you want to like have a photo shoot?
We can do both. Yeah.
Let's go take some photos. I've got local friends. You probably know people here too.
Probably. Yeah. But I mean, anyone that you've already worked with, just because like, particularly, I don't want to send, I have people that I like, but I don't want to send someone out who like doesn't know, necessarily what they're doing and then like not be able to like capture you doing you or like is going to put you in a position where you feel uncomfortable. You're like, oh my God, like now I have to look out for like this fucking guy, which can happen. It's not
I have never not had a fun photo shoot.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when I'm riding a bike on a trail. Yeah. I got to like go back and forth and do stuff over and over again, but.
Yep. Okay. So yeah, the
who
drill.
cares?
Like,
yeah, who cares? But timing wise, if it's going to be between pretty much now and March, it's going to be in San Diego or West Coast. Otherwise March, April, May, June out here.
Yeah. So I'm kind of hoping to have photos for this rounded up by like the second-ish week in January. So I know that might be kind of weird with your timeline, but hopefully we can pull something together.
That will actually be a tight window.
Yeah.
Because let's see, I'll be landing in San Diego right about Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
And then second week of January, that's 2 weeks later. So we got 2 weeks to do a shoot in San Diego in that window, right?
Yeah. And if we need a little more time, we could probably make that happen. But I just, particularly because like I'm excited about this piece and I want it to look really, really good. I like to give our art director a little more time to like do the layout and like make sure it's looking good and,
Okay. Well, I'll send you a Dropbox link to a library and you can choose stuff from there too, which I'm sure you will.
Awesome.
So it's not all the same pictures.
From like one, they're clearly like, wow, like had this guy never been photographed before? Like
wearing all
kind
the
of
same
strange.
Stuff. Yeah.
It's all from like clearly the same. He's wearing the same shirt.
Yeah.
Cool.
Super fun. I'm really excited.
Yeah, I am too. Like this is my favorite issue per year just because I love digging into environmental topics. And I think that this is a unique way of approaching some of those questions without like coming from some of the same tired angles of like, I don't know, just like, I feel like you get bored writing the same story over and over again. And we've definitely not done this story. So
there you go. Now for those that don't know, what's the issue? What's special about this issue?
Yeah. So this is our annual environmental issue. It should be on stands in April. So
very cool.
We're like kind of wrapping it up in January and then it takes like a month to actually print it, which thankfully I don't have to do. I'm only writing it. And then it gets sent off into the world.
It's super interesting because this is an environmental issue, but here I am on a piece of equipment with a power assist
Yeah.
And that has a significant environmental impact too,
Yeah. But I mean,
it's interesting. Yeah.
I would argue that, like, sure, like, we could gripe at anyone who like drives to the trailhead, but I kind of feel like, it's pretty, the amount of energy that you're using is marginal compared to like the difference it makes for you to be able to get out there and connect with the environment.
I agree.
Like, we could nitpick it, like, this guy, like, even though he rode his bike, like, the bike is manufactured with fossil fuel, and it's like, yeah, well, you're an annoying person, and like, that's not really a very holistic way to imagine our connections with the environment.
You're the next person that argues with me or something. That's what I'm going to say. Yeah, well, but you're annoying.
I get that. Like, anytime we write an environmental story, someone's always like, well, you have to drive to trail races. And I'm like, wow, thanks. Like, I guess
so
Trail Runner hasn't defeated the fossil fuel lobby yet. I'm so sorry.
Oh my goodness. Well, they probably drive a Prius, which has a greater environmental impact than a Hummer.
Yeah, right? I mean, again, like, you could nitpick people's individual choices within an inch of their lives, and I don't think that that's like a particular, like, pointing fingers at people. Like, the person pointing the fingers, rarely the person who's like really engaged in a good faith attempt to make the world or the environment better for others. Like, probably the person that would call you out for being like, well, you have a power assist, and it's like, yeah, have you built any trail lately, buddy? Because if not, I don't want to hear it from you.
Good point.
Like, we use machines to build this trail. You could pick it apart within an inch of its life. We're all deeply implicated in these systems, but like, if you're not out there, like, actually trying to make stuff better, then I just don't think your opinion counts for a ton.
Honestly, I don't think your opinion counts. I'm going to start using that one too.
I don't think you matter.
Well, the reason why I say it's interesting when it comes to the environmental conversation, because a typical controversy is mountain bikers versus environmental conservationists. It's a long-standing fight between the two. So it's really interesting that here I am. I mean, for all intents and purposes, although in my heart I don't feel I'm a mountain biker, I am on a mountain bike. And
it does feel like an olive branch between the two communities that haven't always gotten along.
There you go. I'm the metaphoric olive branch. Oh, that's funny. That's funny. Okay, cool. What do you say?
Yeah. Well,
will you send me the file?
Absolutely.
And, I'll probably. Are you okay with me sharing this conversation before the article comes out?
Yeah, that's totally great. And I would love to, okay. I think that you're doing really cool work, and I'd love to promote it on my channels as well. And, get more people seeing you build trail and doing cool stuff.
Well, you're going to be the first one. I've had this like cover image. It's just this headshot of me that it looks kind of like a baseball card picture that I've used for all my podcasts. And I'm like, wait a second, I need to have like a picture of the person that I'm talking with. It's going to get old of this picture of my face on every podcast, So I think you'll be the first where it's going to be a picture of your face.
Oh, sweet. Yeah. Well, I mean, you can either pull one from my social, or I can send you one, whatever works best for you.
Well, I like a screenshot of us in our conversation. That's what I think is the best. Yeah.
Did you get one?
No, I'll take one from the video.
Oh, perfect. Great.
I'll pull it into the timeline, into the Final Cut, and I'll take a screenshot from there.
Awesome. Sweet. Well, yeah, I will share it far and wide. I was actually, I wrote a note to let GAIA know that you use them and that there are glitches, but they should totally reach out to you. I feel like they're always like, I have some friends on the content team there, and they're like, they would love to, work with you.
I would love to provide some user feedback. Hopefully I'm not too annoying, but there's a couple little things where it's like, I wish this would work correctly. That's great. Yeah. Outside has bought everybody recently. That seems like
it's like nothing left.
It's a monopoly.
Is next, probably. I don't know. I have no idea what's going on, but
that'd be crazy.
That would be interesting.
Crazy.
But yeah, well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat. It was really fun to get to know you and bounce ideas off and just, hear about what trail running looks like in your world.
Thanks so much, Zoe. I had a really good time hanging out with you.
Yeah. We'll have an amazing Tuesday and we'll be in touch.
Yes, ma'am.
Right. Bye.
Good night.